The day our groceries sparked a neighborhood war. It was one of those perfect Saturday mornings in our suburban Florida neighborhood, where the sun painted everything golden, the coffee tasted just right, and the only drama I expected was choosing between pancakes or waffles. My wife, Sarah, had just returned from a Costco run, her SUV loaded with enough toilet paper and bottled water to survive a small apocalypse. I was sipping my second cup, scrolling through the news on my tablet, when I glanced out the window and saw her wrestling with a tower of groceries in our driveway. That's when I noticed Helen, our HOA president, marching toward her like she was about to declare war. Little did I know, this was the start of a neighborhood saga that would end with a sheriff's stunned silence, a community uprising, and a for sale sign on Helen's lawn. Our neighborhood, nestled in a palm-lined corner of Florida, was one of those planned communities where every house looked like it was cut from the same beige and tan catalog. The lawns were pristine, the sidewalks spotless, and God help you if your garbage cans lingered curbside past noon on pickup day. We'd moved here 6 months ago, trading Miami's chaos for what we thought would be peace crickets at night, kids on scooters, the works. Sarah's high-stress job had us craving quiet, but we hadn't counted on Helen, the clipboard-wielding queen of suburban tyranny. That morning, Sarah parked our navy blue SUV squarely in our driveway, not on the street, not blocking anything, just where cars belong. She was hauling groceries, the plastic crinkling as she stacked cases of water on the concrete. I was about to head out to help when I spotted Helen. We'd met her once, at the HOA's welcome orientation, where she'd handed us a pamphlet titled Rules Are Respect. I thought it was a quirky slogan. Now, it felt like a warning. Helen didn't just walk. She marched, her arms stiff, fists clenched, eyes locked on Sarah like she'd caught a burglar red-handed. She stopped 6 feet away, planted herself on the sidewalk, and stared, arms crossed, her face a mix of suspicion and disgust. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice slicing through the morning calm. "What exactly are you doing?" Sarah, mid-lift with a box of frozen chicken, looked up, probably wondering if this was a prank. "Hi there," she said, keeping her tone friendly. "Just bringing in groceries." Helen's eyes narrowed. "Your vehicle is violating parking regulations. You're blocking traffic." I did a double take from the window. Our SUV was in our driveway, clear of the street, the sidewalk, everything. The only thing it blocked was our own garage door. Sarah, ever polite, gestured to the obvious. "I'm sorry, but I'm in our driveway to unload. I'm not blocking traffic." Helen's face tightened, like Sarah's calm was a personal insult. "I'm reporting this violation. There will be consequences." Sarah shrugged, still hauling boxes. "You're welcome to do whatever you think is appropriate." I figured Helen would fire off a snippy email to the HOA board, maybe slap us with a warning. I had no idea she was about to escalate this to a level that would make our quiet neighborhood the talk of the town. 30 minutes later, I'd almost forgotten the encounter. Sarah had finished unloading, our pantry looked like a survivalist dream, and I was back to my coffee. Then I heard sirens. Distant at first, but growing louder, closer, until they stopped right outside our house. My heart sank as I saw a sheriff's patrol car parked at our curb, a deputy stepping out, scanning the scene like he expected a crime in progress. "Honey," I called to Sarah, who was organizing cans in the kitchen. "There's a sheriff's deputy at our door." Her face mirrored my confusion. "What? What?" I opened the door to Deputy Rodriguez, a guy in his early 30s with the tired look of someone who'd seen too many pointless calls. His name tag gleamed, and he was already flipping open a notebook. "Good morning, sir," he said. "I got a report of a public disturbance and traffic obstruction at this address." I blinked, trying to process. "Officer, you must have the wrong house. We just unloaded groceries." Rodriguez glanced around. Our driveway was empty, the street clear, nothing but a few cardboard boxes waiting for recycling. "I see a clear driveway," he said, echoing my thoughts. "Where's the obstruction?" Sarah joined us, looking as baffled as I felt. "Our car's been in the garage for half an hour," she said. "Who called this in?" Rodriguez checked his notes. A Mrs. Helen Carter reported a public safety issue. The pieces clicked, but I still couldn't believe it. Had Helen really called 911 over groceries? It was absurd, but here we were, explaining to a deputy that we'd committed the crime of carrying toilet paper into our house. Rodriguez seemed to realize this was a waste of time. "When someone calls 911, I have to follow up," he said, almost apologetically. Can I see some ID to verify you live here? Sarah nodded, reaching for her wallet. I expected her to pull out her driver's license, wrap this up, and send Rodriguez on his way. Instead, she handed him a card that made his eyes widen. He froze, his breath catching as he read it. His posture stiffened, and he looked at Sarah like she'd just grown a second head. FBI, counterterrorism, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The change was instant. Rodriguez straightened, his tone shifting from routine to deferential. "Ma'am, agent, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding." Sarah stayed calm, her voice steady. "I understand you're just doing your job, deputy." Rodriguez nodded, still clutching the card like it might bite him. "I'll be filing a report about misuse of emergency services," he said, glancing across the street at Helen's house. He didn't say more, just got in his car and drove off, leaving an eerie silence in his wake. I should have felt relieved, but something about Helen's earlier stare told me this wasn't over. 2 days later, an envelope arrived that proved me right. It was thick, marked important legal notice in bold red letters, and sent from the HOA. My stomach dropped as I opened it, Sarah peering over my shoulder. Inside was a professionally formatted document demanding a $500 fine for failure to comply with traffic flow regulations and disregard for neighborhood safety protocol. I stared at the paper, my mind reeling. $500 for unloading groceries? Panic set in. "Honey, let's just pay it," I said, already calculating how we'd cut back to cover it. "It's cheaper than fighting." Sarah's eyebrows lifted, her tone like ice. "We're not paying for something we didn't do." She grabbed the HOA rulebook, a binder thick enough to double as a doorstop, and started flipping pages. "Let's see what they're basing this on." We spent the next hour at the kitchen table, reading bylaws like lawyers prepping for trial. Sarah found the key. Violation notices required 3 board member signatures and photographic evidence. Helen's notice had neither, just her signature and a lot of hot air. "This isn't just unfair," Sarah said, her voice firm. "It's invalid." She drafted a response, polite but razor-sharp, demanding documentation and citing state laws on misuse of emergency services. We sent it by certified mail, requiring Helen's signature. I felt a flicker of hope, but Sarah was cautious. "She won't stop here," she said, staring down the street. "People like Helen don't back down. They escalate." She was right. 3 days later, an email landed in my inbox with the subject, "Emergency HOA meeting, your attendance required." It was from Linda Hayes, the HOA secretary, announcing a special session to address community safety concerns and compliance issues. The phrasing wasn't subtle. This was about us. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, called Sarah to warn her. "I'm not supposed to say this," she whispered, "but Helen's not alone. Be ready." The meeting was set for Tuesday at the community center, and the tension was palpable. We enlisted Tom Bennett, a retired lawyer who'd once been fined by Helen for using the wrong shade of mulch. "They voted me out when I challenged her," he warned, but his eyes gleamed. This time, she picked the wrong fight. The night before, Sarah seemed nervous for the first time. "Are we overreacting?" she asked. "Is this worth the stress?" I thought about Helen's 911 call. "Have you ever called the cops because someone was carrying groceries?" I asked. She shook her head, and we agreed to stick to Tom's advice. Stay quiet. Let Helen overplay her hand. The community center was packed that Tuesday, 23 people, the biggest turnout anyone could remember. Usually, HOA meetings drew a handful of retirees. This was different. Neighbors whispered, eyes darting between us and Helen, who stood at the front, shuffling papers, looking smug. I whispered to Tom, "She thinks she's already won." Then Helen spoke, and my blood ran cold. "We need to discuss the federal agent who's been surveilling our residents." The word surveilling hit like a bomb. The room went silent, every eye on us. Helen launched into a speech about community safety, claiming Sarah's aggressive parking threatened the neighborhood. A neighbor, Mr. Larson, chimed in, "We don't need federal agents watching us." Another added, "We didn't vote for spies." Helen had been busy, spreading fear, twisting Sarah's job into something sinister. I felt cornered, but Sarah stood, her voice steady. "I'm a neighbor first, agent second," she said. "I live here. I don't work here. My job has nothing to do with this community." Tom took the floor, holding up the HOA charter. "Let's talk about actual violations," he said. Helen called 911 without board approval, breaking her own rules. He read the regulation aloud, emphasizing that only life-threatening emergencies justified such calls. Does anyone think toilet paper is life-threatening? Helen bristled. I have full authority to call 911 for threats, she snapped. What threat? Sarah asked. Groceries. The room tensed, and then Sarah dropped her bombshell. I requested the 911 call recording from the sheriff's department, she said, pulling a USB drive from her purse. Helen's face went white. You can't have that, she stammered. Sarah handed the drive to Linda. It's a public record, certified by Deputy Rodriguez. Let's hear what Helen reported. Linda plugged in the drive, and Helen's voice filled the room, shrill and panicked. I need to report a major violation. There's a blue SUV blocking our entrance. Suspicious people unloading large packages. This could be a safety threat. Gasps echoed. Mrs. Evans muttered. She called them on Groceries? Mr. Chin shook his head. I knew she'd snap. Helen tried to recover. That's edited, she cried, but Tom held up the certified paperwork. This is official with Rodriguez's signature. Want me to read his badge number? The room erupted, neighbors shouting over each other. How could she call 911 over Groceries? This is why HOAs get a bad name. Sarah stood firm. I want a neighborhood, not a surveillance zone. A board member moved to suspend Helen, and within minutes, Linda was named temporary chair. Helen grabbed her binder and stormed out, but not before shooting Sarah a look that wasn't defeat, it was rage. I felt a chill. This wasn't over. 3 days later, Deputy Rodriguez called Sarah. We're citing Mrs. Carter for misuse of emergency services, he said. $1,200, plus a court appearance. Sarah asked, her voice low. Am I being investigated for misusing my credentials? Rodriguez reassured her. No, ma'am. We're filing a harassment report. No federal agent should be targeted for unloading groceries. But Helen wasn't done. Anonymous emails and social media posts began accusing Sarah of abusing her FBI authority. One post read, Some people bring fear home with them. Another asked, Should we feel safe around federal surveillance? Sarah was shaken. Did I handle this wrong? She asked me one night, reading another venomous message. You defended yourself, I said. You're right, and everyone who matters knows it. Sarah fought back with an open letter in the HOA newsletter, calling for transparent, fair leadership. The response was overwhelming. Neighbors shared their own stories of Helen's tyranny. Fines for mailbox colors, Christmas lights, even grass 2/10 of an inch too long. One man was fined for 2 melodic wind chimes. The pattern was clear. Helen had been harassing residents for years, hiding behind her title. Emboldened, neighbors gathered outside Helen's house in a silent protest, holding signs like No More Harassment and Fair Rules for All. Someone left a roll of toilet paper on her mat. Helen watched from behind her curtains, alone. Her attempts to fight back failed. The County HOA Association rejected her appeal. A lawyer told her a defamation suit against Sarah would go nowhere. Then, one morning, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. Rumors swirled called a realtor in Georgia, packed boxes. At her court hearing, Helen tried to justify her 911 call. I was protecting the community, she said. The judge cut her off. Toilet paper isn't a safety threat. He upheld the $1,200 fine, added 20 hours of community service, and ordered a public apology. Helen's final act was a reinstatement hearing to reclaim her HOA role. She reserved the community center, set out cookies, and waited. No one came. Linda, there as temporary chair, gently told her, maybe it's time to accept it's over. On moving day, Helen loaded a U-Haul alone, neighbors watching from their windows. Her cat, Shadow, chased the truck as she prepared to leave. She stopped, looked at the cat, then drove off, abandoning even her pet. A neighbor took Shadow in, but the image lingered. Helen had burned every bridge. 6 months later, our community thrived under Linda's leadership. She'd implemented Sarah's suggested reforms, clear violation procedures, required evidence, board oversight. The young couple who bought Helen's house got a welcome basket, not fines. They wave when we unload groceries, a running joke in our house. We occasionally see Helen's social media posts from Georgia, already griping about her new HOA's lax rules. Some people never learn, but our neighborhood did. We learned that unchecked power corrupts, and standing up to bullies calmly, firmly can change everything. I'll never forget the absurdity of a 911 call over groceries, or the look on Deputy Rodriguez's face when he saw Sarah's ID. Most of all, I'll remember that sometimes the best way to handle unreasonable people is to let them expose themselves. Have you ever faced an HOA tyrant like Helen? Or dealt with someone abusing power in your community? Share your story in the comments side. Love to hear your craziest neighborhood drama. And let's talk about the bigger issue. How do we handle harassment and injustice in our daily lives? Should we confront it head-on, like Sarah, or avoid the fight to keep the peace? Take a stand, share your thoughts, and let's get this conversation going. Your voice matters.